We are continuing tonight our great and glorious series, and our main scripture for these talks has been Nehemiah chapter 4, verse 4. And in that, the context is that Nehemiah is a regular guy, and 140 years before he writes about these moments, the Babylonians came in, wiped out Jerusalem, tore down the walls, took a bunch of people as captives. And people had tried to rebuild the walls, and in doing so, rebuild the people multiple times and failed. But then God put a vision on Nehemiah's heart for Jerusalem. He rolled back, gathered a workforce, and starts rebuilding the walls. That's his story in a nutshell. And so let's read this scripture. We'll talk about it for a few minutes. It says, "Then as I looked over the situation, I called together the nobles and the rest of the people and said to them, 'Don't be afraid of the enemy. Remember the Lord who's great and glorious, and fight for your brothers, your sons, your daughters, your wives, and your homes.'" Remember the Lord who's great and glorious. Remember the Lord. When there's a lot of other things trying to get your attention, when there's a lot of other things trying to be the narrative in your life, when there are a lot of other things trying to be distractions, remember the Lord who's great and glorious. Come on, let's pray together. God, thank you for these moments that we get to spend here. God, we ask you to speak to our hearts tonight. God, we pray for the Flames. They look so bad. But Lord, I do pray that they won't improve until Thursday after they're done their 2-game set with the Leafs. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, there we go. Guys, I would have said up until this week that I was a pretty good multitasker. And I know there's probably some people out there feel like you're pretty good multitaskers. I've done a little bit of research, mostly just personal experience. I've used myself as a case study. I would say confidently now that I am no longer a great multitasker. I prided myself on being able to balance a bunch of things at once. And, what is it? Is it like have pots in the fire, kettles on the stove? Something? Irons in the fire. Irons in the fire. A lot of pots in the fire. Anyways. What are you cooking? I don't know. So I thought I was a pretty good multitasker. So this week on Monday, we moved into a new place, and I was unpacking stuff, and we had some help. We got all the stuff in, or most of the stuff in, and then Natasha and the kids went back to our other house, and so I was doing it, man. I was putting together a bed upstairs. I was organizing stuff. I was unpacking a vehicle. I had a lot of things on the go. I was becoming a better man on the inside because I was listening to a podcast, and I was growing in my faith and growing and develop the inner man. I was making a solid me investment. So all of these things are happening at the same time. And I had my truck parked kind of half in and half out of the garage. No big deal. But we're garage newbies, we've never had a garage before. And so at one point, as I was lifting things and building stuff, I thought, you know what, I'm going to take the garage door opener out of my pocket, and I'm going to put it somewhere safe because I'm afraid that I'm going to accidentally bump it and close the door and whatever. So I took it out of my pocket, and you got to remember, now I'm multitasking. Got a lot of things on the go. And I'm always interceding for you and my family. So those things on top of the podcast and the building, those really spiritual things are always happening. And so all that's going on, and I grab the garage door opener, and I go up to my truck, and I open the door, and I throw it in, and at some point in throwing it in, I don't know if I pressed the button or if somebody was inside and they caught it and they pressed the button to screw me over. I'm not sure. It might have just been an attack from the devil. I'm not entirely sure what happened. But at some point, as I completed this motion, I triggered the door. But I was getting fed in my inner man, so I didn't hear that something had happened. I wasn't really into it. And so I'm walking back into the house, and all of a sudden, there's this this crazy noise. And I turn around, and I see the garage door coming down on top of my truck. Now, you would think no big deal because they're supposed to have sensors to stop those things. They're not supposed to crush children and pets and things like that. So they're supposed to bounce back up when there's a little bit of resistance. So I'm waiting, and it doesn't bounce back up. And then I run over, and I don't know what button to press because I'm kind of new, and I'm pressing this button, and the light goes on, and then I press the other button, and it wouldn't stop trying to shut on my truck. And I'm watching as as the motor that controls it like breaks off the back of the door. And I'm like, no! And then I watch as it pops out of the tracks on the far side. And in this, it was like the worst moment. All of a sudden, all of the great work that God was doing on the inner man was gone. And I grabbed my AirPods and I said things I shouldn't have said, but I was alone, so it doesn't really even matter. And it just like, it got ugly quick. And you know, now, I mean, it's awesome. We're renting this place for like the next 6 months, and we got a brand new garage door, courtesy of yours truly. And I ran it past the landlord. She felt pretty good about me paying for the whole thing. So that's the way that ended. And moral of the story, I'm not as good at multitasking as I thought I was. And the more I thought, and the more as I was thinking about it, like, Lord, I need to do some research on this because it'll help me if we're all not as good at multitasking as we thought we were. It turns out you're probably not as good at multitasking as you thought you were either. So I'm not alone. There's been enough research done on our brains to tell us that we can't really do a whole lot of things well at once. In fact, there was a study done kind of obviously, if we're to do this type of study in COVID, the numbers would be off the charts because everybody working from home, and there's all types of distractions when you're working from home, like snacks and Netflix and kids and all these other things. But even before that, the study from the University of California showed that a typical worker would be interrupted every 11 minutes on the job. Every 11 minutes. What makes that stat even crazier is that not only do we get interrupted every 11 minutes, but it takes the average person 25 minutes to regain their focus on the task at hand. So if you do the math, it's kind of a mind job, but the reality is like you get distracted, and then you're only half focused and you get distracted again. And then you're half focused, you get distracted again. Like you never really get to recalibrate and reset. So most people are working at such a low level of efficiency and productivity simply because we get so easily distracted. Distraction, the process of interrupting our attention, drawing our focus away from our primary goal or interest. It takes us away from that thing that we want to do, that goal that we set out for ourselves, that thing that we woke up in the morning and thought, man, I'm going to accomplish this today, but distraction. It comes. It's why date night becomes another late night at the office. It's why a tea party with a kid becomes another phone call or a scroll through Instagram. It's why there are far too many couples struggling with intimacy issues because they have good internet service. Distraction. The lights are low in the bedroom. It's not candles, it's the blue light from your screen, and you kind of forget that you're there with the love of your life. It's distraction. Distraction happens to everybody. But here's the terrible thing about it is because we all have something that we want to do. Nobody wakes up. Very few people wake up and think, man, I want to accomplish absolutely nothing with my life today. Like everybody wakes up with some sort of goal, okay? And because we wake up with goals, but because we get so easily distracted, we often get to the end of the day and we were left wondering like, oh man, have you ever gotten to the end of the day and thought like, oh, there's so many things I wish I'd gotten done today. So many things I wish I took care of. Oh, I'm going to have to put that off till tomorrow. But it was like on yesterday's list, and it starts to build up. And so what happens is we end living with this perpetual sense of failure because we never actually do the thing that we wanted to do. We get tired because we're exhausted of getting distracted, then trying to recalibrate. There's a lot of mental stress that comes with knowing that you've drifted from what you wanted to do and have to come back and get on track. We try to recalibrate for our desired interest, but then we get diverted again, and we lack productivity. We're missing key moments, especially with the ones that we love. We're missing opportunities to invest in ourselves and grow. We're just too distracted. And I was thinking back to some medieval history. Chloe, my 12-year-old, is starting to take like some more, I don't know what you'd even call it, like not ancient history. She's doing some medieval history, and she's looking at conquests and all these things. And so we were talking about it one night, and then I did a deep dive on medieval torture. I don't know if you ever do that, but it's just what happened. It just kind of came out of our conversation. And so was reading about quartering, where they would, let me just paint the picture for you. It's a beautiful picture for church on a Sunday night, where they'd like tie ropes to each limb, and then tie the other end of the rope to a horse, and then they just send all the horses for a jog, But they would do it in stages. So to torture you, they'd start by just giving the horses a jolt, so you'd like feel it in your limbs, and then it would just get worse and worse until, there's 5 pieces of you, right? Like that's the whole, you get there. And, sorry, that's pretty graphic, but whatever. And as I was looking into it, it's so interesting because in medieval history, the French word that they would use to describe the act of quartering through torture actually translate distraction. To be pulled in multiple directions at once. To be pulled in multiple directions. And now maybe more than ever when you consider news and working from home and the fact that we have these devices of distractive torture in our pockets that were supposed to make our lives easier but really give us a million things to do except the things that really matter. We are suffering from this torture, this distraction that is quite literally killing potential, robbing us of our futures, destroying intimacy, and big picture, interrupting the destiny that God's trying to lead us on. We're so distracted. So I think we can relate with the idea of being pulled in several directions. So Nehemiah, our hero, our central figure as we've been walking through this series, was in a position where he had this great passion and this great vision and was doing this great work, but was coming up against every type of distraction. Nehemiah chapter 6, I want to unpack just a couple of these distractions. And if you're taking notes, which I hope you are, probably everybody is, I can see you all, just like the blue light's a good thing in here. So you got the blue light because your phone's out, because you're taking notes, because you want Jesus to speak directly to you. That's fine. The title for tonight is Ain't Nobody Got Time for That. You can say it with some sass if you want to. I'm not going to do that, but you can sass it up. Ain't nobody got time for that. Does anybody remember that auto-tune, like, what is that, 2012? Ain't nobody got, we should, I tried this earlier, and it kind of worked. So we're going to try it again tonight. Okay, so let's divide the room right here, like right, Pastor Quincy, you just get to pick a side. Okay, so, so dumb. I'm trying so hard not to do my version of that little clip. I'm not going to do it, but look it up for yourself, YouTube. Okay, so I need this side of the room. We're going to do a little working together. Okay, so this side of the room, you guys have a part. We're going to be like a choir tonight. So you're going to say cold pop barbecue. Okay, so like this, you're going to say cold pop barbecue, cold pop. Okay, that's your job. Okay, then you guys are going to say, ain't nobody got time for that. You can say it a little bit sassy, but that's what you're going to do, okay? All right, so I'm going to get this side going, then I'm going to come back, and we'll figure our part out together. It's going to sound beautiful. Okay, so you guys ready? Okay, let's try this. So here we go. Cold pop barbecue, cold pop, say it with me, barbecue, cold pop, a little bit louder in the front row over here, cold pop, barbecue. Okay, keep going. Okay, ready? Ain't nobody got time for that. Ain't nobody got, come on guys, ain't nobody got time. Keep going. That's so good. Keep going. Ain't nobody got time for that. Ain't nobody got time. Oh, this is good. Man, guys, we just stepped into the heavenly realms and joined with the angels in lifting up glorious praise to our Father. Oh, beautiful. Okay, that's so stupid. But thank you for indulging me. That was fantastic. Okay, ain't nobody got time for that. Listen, every time you are trying to accomplish a great God work in your life, you will also see great distractions in front of you. It is inevitable. And this is exactly where Nehemiah finds himself. They are so close to having the wall finished. They are so close to this thing being done. They are so close to being able to celebrate the completion of the wall, but there's distractions showing up. It says, when Sanballat and Tobiah and Geshem the Arab and the rest of our enemies heard that I had built the wall and that there were no breaches left in it, which means there were no spaces, no gaps, except for the doors. He just had to put the doors on. Sanballat and Geshem sent to me, saying, come, let us meet together at Hakkephirim in the plain of Ono. But they intended to do me harm. And I sent messengers to them, saying, I'm doing a great work, and I cannot come down. Why should the work stop while I leave it and come down to you? I don't have time for that. And I was so close. And some of you tonight are so close. You're so close to being out of this season. You are so close to breakthrough. You are so close to freedom. You are so close to reconciliation in relationships. You are so close. Don't stop now. You got to keep going. You're so close. But every time you get so close, you are going to feel so potentially distracted. And the enemies show back up in greater force as Nehemiah is so close to completing the job. And what's interesting about this to me is that they've already tried military threats, and they've already done a whole bunch of criticism and manipulation and all of these things. And now, in the final moments like this, all he's got to do is hang the doors. These are the last moments before the job of restoring the walls and ultimately restoring the dignity of the people is completed. Like, he's so close. And this is the enemy's last opportunity to get in there and disrupt the work. And we have to notice the strategy of the enemy in this situation doesn't come at him with big, obvious threats. And most of the time, the attack of the enemy, the devil, on our lives is not going to show up in big, obvious threats because we're not stupid. Generally, we're not going to give in, and we're not going to settle for the things where it obviously looks like this is going to be toxic and destructive. We don't do those things on purpose. But notice, in his last moment, this is like a save your best for last thing. He's pulling out all the stops, like the very best he's got to give to try and distract Nehemiah from completing the purpose of rebuilding this walls comes disguised as distraction. It's distraction. And that's what makes distraction so deadly, is that most of the time it doesn't seem negative. It's simply an invitation. He says, hey, come down and let's have a chat in the plains of Ono. Let's hang out. Distraction comes in three different ways. Distraction will come into your life by invitation. That's point number one. Distraction will come by invitation. It's an invite. It's an invite to something that looks harmless. It's an invite to something that looks innocent. It's an invite to something that doesn't look like it's going to derail the destiny that God's got in your life. It doesn't look like it would derail. Like, so what if Nehemiah takes a day off and goes down and has a convo? Does that mean the whole work is done? It looks pretty innocent. But having a meeting, while isn't a bad thing for Nehemiah, is also not a God thing for Nehemiah. And we got to be able to know the difference. Several scholars, as they've unpacked the nuance of the text and the conversation that seems to be happening here, have revealed that while they had secret intentions of doing him harm, the request for a meeting seemed like an invitation to come to some sort of peaceful relationship. It was a diplomatic invite. So there's destruction, but it's masked in good intentions. It's a simple distraction. And listen, for you and I, every single day, there are good things that can distract us from the great thing that God's trying to accomplish in our lives. There are good things. There's entertainment. There's new opportunities. There's decisions we get to make about our health and our relationships and our investments and our careers and our business and our friendships. Like these, there are a lot of good things out there. But notice, God never asked Nehemiah to go to the region and improve diplomatic relationships. He asked him to go to the region and build a wall. And so Nehemiah had this understanding of, this is what I'm here to do. I can't get distracted by good things that are not the God thing. And I love his response. I am doing a great work. I can't come down. Why should the work stop? Well, I leave it and come down to you. It's not going to be worth it for me. That's a pass for me. And if there were an auto-tune meme contemporary version of the Bible, this passage would be titled, Ain't Nobody Got Time for That. He doesn't have time for it. He's doing a great work. And these are the hardest distractions to deal with because it means that we are going to have to say no to good things. You're going to have to say no to good things. You're going to have to say no to some things that people will not understand. How could you possibly say no to that? You're going to have to say no to some people, and they're not going to understand how you could possibly say no to them. But we have to have enough confidence in who God has called us to be and is challenging us to be, that we're willing to look even at a situation, an opportunity, a person, a relationship, and say, good, not great. Good, not great. Nehemiah says no 4 times in a row here to the same request. Hey, come, let's hang out in the plains of Ono. Nope, not for me. Come, let's hang out. Nope, not for me. Come, let's hang out. No, not for me. Come, let's 4 times. And listen, this is not just a leadership skill. One of the most important life skills you and I could ever establish and develop is the ability to say no. Man, when I look back on my life, the pain I would have saved myself if I had learned to say no early instead of just going with the flow. If I had learned to say no, man, we've got to understand the power and the importance of saying no. I want to just release you. You can say no and be perfectly grammatically correct. No is a complete sentence all by itself. Somebody asks, no, hey, Pastor, do you have time to meet up? No. Why? Sorry, no is a complete sentence, no reason necessary. Oh, you can say no and not have to fill in the blanks. You can say no and not have to. Listen, don't bother filling in the blanks. Most of the time you lie about the reason anyways. No's an okay answer. No's a great answer. And it's so easy. Everybody struggles. I just don't know how to say no. And there's so many people that, honestly, so many of the conversations I have with good people who have great callings but are only settling for good, not great. So many of them are like, I just don't know how to say no. Let me help you. Inhale. Then something happens. I don't know all the science behind it. Something in here makes a sound. And as you project the air out of your mouth, and there's a certain arrangement of your tongue and your teeth and the airflow, and the sound comes out, and it sounds like this. No! That's it. It's that easy. It is that easy to say no. We got to learn how to say no to good so we can stay focused on great. We got to learn how to say no to okay when God has created you for a purpose, with a plan, for a destiny. I will not get distracted by second best. Listen, if we're always available for everyone, we're going to have nothing to give anyone. Don't get lured in to good and possible. Man, the Apostle Paul says everything is permissible. Not everything is beneficial. Just because you can, just because you could fit it in, just because you could take the time, just because you could, doesn't mean we should. And the devil wants to distract us because it's subtle. We don't see the destruction coming, and before you know it, we've totally sacrificed what God's created us and called us to do because we just say yes to little thing after little thing after little thing that's not the great thing that we've been made for. We got to have enough discernment to know that this thing that I'm saying yes or no to is either going to move me forward or hold me back. And listen, can I just encourage you, be discerning enough to understand that there is no such thing as neutral when it comes to God's kingdom. The kingdom of heaven is forcefully advancing, and the righteous, it never stops moving forward. And so don't look at anything. There's somebody, I believe even in a relationship, and your justification for getting into the relationship, well, it's not bad. Really? You want to spend the rest of your life with not bad? You want to spend the rest of your life with it's better than what I've had before? Come on, there is no neutral. If you kept your car in neutral all the time, if it never came out of neutral, you'd take it back. It's a giant waste of money and space. And anything that you devote your attention to that's simply neutral when it comes to God's calling is a giant waste of your time and your destiny and your space and your capacity and your potential. Cars are meant to be in drive with your foot on the pedal. That's when they maximize what they were created to do. It's the same with you. Do not settle for neutral. Neutral is going backwards in the kingdom of God. We've got to keep moving forwards. I'm doing a great work. Listen, and if you really feel the need to add anything to your no, just add that. No, I'm doing a great work. I don't have time. I'm building a great family, And yeah, so I'm not going to be out like 7 nights a week. I'm building a great marriage, so there are things I'm not going to look at and ideas I'm not going to entertain and conversations I'm not going to have because I'm building something that's going to last my life. I'm building a great future, so I'm not going to keep paying attention to my past mistakes when God's got an open door for me in 2021 to make the most of this year. I'm building something great, and I'm not going to waste my future distracted. Now, the other word that we need to really look at in Nehemiah's response here is the word while. He says, I'm doing a great work, and I cannot come down. Why should the work stop while I leave it and come down to you? Why should the work stop while? Leonard Ravenhill, who's like an old school pastor, author, theologian, myself and a bunch of our team read one of his books in the fall, and one of the quotes that really stood out to me, I think I've even shared it on a Sunday, is the opportunity of a lifetime needs to be seized during the lifetime of the opportunity. So you have a window. You have a while. Everybody has a while. Everybody's got a while. Nehemiah says, "What? I'm not gonna. Why should the work stop while? Why should the work stop in this window of time? Why should the work stop while in this window of opportunity? I come down to you. I've only got so many whiles." And the devil desperately wants us to miss the window of our opportunity. And that's where the emotion of regret comes in. Regret happens when we know we've missed the window of a while. You only have the capacity for so many whiles in the run of your lifetime. There are only so many whiles in a day. There are only so many moments in the 80, 90, 100 years that you're going to live on the planet. We only have so many whiles, and Nehemiah has a window of opportunity to complete the wall, and he's determined not to miss it. Listen, do not let the great work in your life stop because you're focusing on things that are not worth your while. It's not worth my time. It's not worth my while. God has been challenging me so much recently, especially with my kids, on how important all of my whiles are. I'm not going to waste them on useless arguments. I'm not going to waste them chasing things that aren't part of my calling. I got to stay in my lane. I'm not going to waste them. While my kids are young, I have an opportunity to sit on the ground and have a picnic eating craft dinner. While my kids are young, I can sit with my son and we can play Super Mario Maker 2 because he wants to play. Listen, I'm probably not going to have that opportunity in a decade. While they're young, I can take them out skating and try and have some fun with them because I'm not going to always have that moment. While I'm married, while I'm 41 and married, I've got an opportunity to invest in my relationship with my wife that I won't have tomorrow, that I won't have the next day. I've got a while. I got a moment. Got her flowers this afternoon. Why? Because I just have a while. I don't know what it looks like. Listen, while you're married and you don't have kids, listen, I understand that there are all types of situations and circumstances, and there are people praying for miracles and believing. Listen, don't get so frustrated with what you don't have that you miss the whiles God has given you to invest in one another. Oh, but I'm so desperate for a relationship. Great! Desperation one doesn't really help. Everyone can tell. But listen, don't waste the whiles that you've been given to improve yourself and build your character and pursue God without distraction. You've been given a while. We got to invest our whiles, not waste them. And how do you filter? Well, man, this is where when your vision has been prayed through and planned through and you've worked it out, where God allows vision to help be a filter for what opportunities you say yes to and what opportunities you say no to. Is this going to bring me forward in what God has created me to do? The plains of Ono are located on a thin stretch of land between Samaria and Ashdod, which would be two enemies of the Jewish people. And so should Nehemiah have said yes to this invitation, he certainly would have gone down into this strip of land and ended up captive, incapacitated, or dead because of an invitation. And over and over and over again, Christians, with a God destiny and a God purpose are so, we're so distracted and pulled in so many directions and get passionate about so many things that aren't the actual thing that God created us for, that we end up ineffective, incapacitated, and dead when it comes to what God's trying to do in our lives. So we get distracted by invitation. We also get distracted by intimidation. Intimidation is a distraction. Nehemiah chapter 6, verse 5 says, in the same way, Sanballat, for the 5th time now, sent his servant to me with an open letter in his hand. And it was written, it is reported among the nations, and Geshem also says it, that you and the Jews intend to rebel. That is why you're building the wall. And according to these reports, you wish to become their king. And you've also set up prophets to proclaim concerning you in Jerusalem, there is a king in Judah. And now the king will hear these reports. So now come and let us take counsel together. This is an open letter. Letters would have been written on papyrus or leather. Typically, they would have been wrapped up, tied up, and sealed with clay. Now, the fact that it was an open letter would have been fully intentional by Sanballat to make sure that as an open letter, anybody who had access to it would be able to read its contents. This is the first real attempt at a multimedia cancellation of a person. They're trying to cancel Nehemiah by spreading this narrative that he's only rebuilding the walls to try and become king, that he's already getting ready to announce himself as king, that he has other intentions, which, by the way, if you are a person that has strong vision, weak people will always throw criticism at you. And the weakest form of criticism is they're in it for their own interests. They'll question your motives. That's exactly what happens again to Nehemiah. And I love how it happens. They say, it's reported among the nations. Everybody knows. Really? Everybody? They say, and Geshem says it's true. So it's been reported, think about the significance of it's been reported among the nations. There's a rumor going around in several countries, and Geshem has fact-checked it. Now, just hold on for a sec, because Geshem's on Sanballat's payroll. And I don't know, I think I'm learning, guys, I'm slow to the game here, but I'm pretty sure you can't trust a fact-checker that's paid by the source. I have yet to run into a fact check that I think is actually doing me any good. And that would be the case here. You say, everybody knows. As you unpack the people we actually see in the narrative, we see that, Sanballat wrote the letter. There's a messenger that carried the letter. And Geshem is mentioned in the letter. So there's this, when he says, several nations are deeply concerned about your attempts and desire to be king. This is what I like to call crowdsourcing criticism. When you actually don't have enough support and you're actually coming from a weak position and what you're bringing forth isn't even really true, and so you try to lump other people into it to make you feel better about your idea. Crowdsourcing criticism. Crowdsourcing. This is when people say things to you like, a lot of us have been just really thinking lately that you've, insert whatever they think, but it's like this a lot of us language. Several people have noticed this about you recently, and we're so concerned. Several people? Who? Who's several? Do you have split personalities? Like is that just you? Is it like Sanballat says nations? So unless Sanballat and Geshem and the messenger are all from different nations, it sounds to me like 3 guys are thinking this. Oh, but all these people. Man, we deal with some of this crowdsourcing idea in our own family. Azara is always the one that gets crowdsourced because she's the most innocent and pure. And so even last week, family movie night, and we're having a little bit of a debate over what movie we should all watch. And one of the kids comes over and says, Dad, but Zara and I were thinking. I was like, really? Zara's not even here. She's not even in the room. So I go find her, and she's like coloring a picture somewhere, and I'm like, honey, did you want to watch this movie? She's like, we're watching a movie? I said, no idea. You just got to call out the crowdsourcing, man. When somebody brings something to me and they use that crowdsource language, oh, Pastor Jonathan, so many of us have a real problem with blank. You know what my first question is? Who? That's great. So many. How many? An exact number. How many? You? More? Okay, great. What are their names? Tell me everybody's name, because I want to fact check myself. I want to go ask the questions. I want to have the conversation. I love it, man. It's amazing how quickly the concern gets smaller and smaller and smaller when you start to actually ask them to give proof of this crowdsourced criticism. So tell me exactly how many and what they're, oh, no, I swore to confidence. Oh, really? So you got a whole bunch of spineless friends who don't have the courage to have a conversation on their own. And so I love it. And I love it even more when, so you start with the who, and if they won't give you the who, then you just say, so it's just you? So you have an issue. That's okay. Let's talk about it. Let's just be grown up enough that we can actually have a conversation. Now, my favorite thing really is when they actually give some names, and I love going to fact check myself. That's my favorite. And I love being able to come back. And I pull I pull everybody together. I'm like, well, apparently everybody is thinking this. And it's amazing how everybody's like, no, never thought that in my life. The issue goes away. They're crowdsourcing the criticism. It really probably wasn't as big a deal as they were making it seem. Yet here's Nehemiah. The idea that he wanted to be king was preposterous. There was no truth to it. I mean, there was nothing in him that had those selfish ambitions, but generally people aren't interested in the truth because they don't gain the same type of traction as lies. And so we see this in our own world right now, that as thousands report it and believe it, it becomes powerful even if it's not true. And so you could have a situation where you've got a popular lie and it's dangerous, but it doesn't make it more true. A popular lie is still a lie. And so it'd be easy to understand Nehemiah getting intimidated, getting defensive. The kings weren't patient with governors who wanted to become kings. And so you would understand if he jumped in and tried to defend his honor and defend his motives and all this stuff. But Nehemiah never jumps to his own defense because he's anchored in the truth. Verse 8 says, then I sent to him saying, no such things as you say have been done, for you're inventing them out of your own minds. For they wanted to frighten us, thinking their hands will drop from the work and it will not be done. But now, oh God, strengthen my hands. He calls out the lie. Remember, just because you read it, just because you heard it, doesn't mean it's true. You and I have to be able to discern. 1 Thessalonians 5:21. Test everything and hold fast to what is good. What does that mean? If it's not good, let go. If it's not good, if it's not going to take you into your future, if it's not true, let it go. John chapter 8, verse 32 says that if you know the truth will set you free. Nehemiah is so anchored in the truth that he's been called, he's been equipped, he's been chosen, he's been raised up, he's got a destiny and a plan and a purpose, so anchored in that truth that he's able to move on, not even addressing, like he just says, that's not true, not defending himself. He prays, God, strengthen my hands. I love it. God, it's just such trust in this prayer because he said, God, I'm going to trust you to take care of all the distractions. Would you just keep my hands strong for the work that you created me for? Just keep me strong to do what you've asked me to do. Verse 10 says, now when I went into the house of Shemaiah, the son of Delaiah, son of Metabel, who was confined to his home, he said, let us meet together in the house of God within the temple. Let us close the doors of the temple, for they are coming to kill you. I mean, it's a big deal. Nehemiah, we got to hide out, man. They are coming to assassinate you. They're coming to kill you by night. But I said, should such a man as I run away? And what man such as I could go into the temple and live? I will not go in. And I understood and saw that God had not sent him, but he had pronounced a prophecy against me because of Tobiah and Sanballat had hired him. Listen, just because somebody says spiritual things to you does not mean they've been spiritually inspired. Listen, there's far too much spiritual manipulation happening in the world right now where people are spiritualizing political things. People are spiritualizing social things. People are using spirituality to try and manipulate and control. That's exactly what's happening here. We've got to be quick to it. We've got to discern it. We've got to be able to look at it and say, no, this does not make sense. This doesn't align. This doesn't make sense with where God is leading me and taking me. You got to know the truth so you can discern the lie. For this purpose, he was hired, that I should be afraid and act in this way and sin, and so they could give me a bad name in order to taunt me. Listen, we will be distracted by invitation, distraction will come by intimidation, and distraction will come by imitation. What do I mean? Well, see, Sanballat realizes that Nehemiah is not going to go down to the plain of Ono, so he sends an inside man. He hires this guy who's close to the building project, can get some audience with Nehemiah. Shemaiah is confined to his home. Nehemiah comes to visit him, and it's there where Shemaiah is already hiding out that he presents this plan to Nehemiah. They're going to kill you. You need to hide out with me. Let's hide out together. You need to do what I'm doing. And he unpacks it, and there would be this temptation to believe what he's saying and then want to play it safe with Shemaiah. Just do what I'm doing. Stay here. Stay safe. It's safer in here than it is out there. Listen, we've got to be so careful that we don't start making our decisions based on just what other people are doing. The distraction will come by imitation. You were not created to do what everybody else is doing, to think how everybody else thinks, and to go where everybody else goes. We are called apart. We are set apart. The calling on your life is unique. We all have a lane that we run in. We've got to be careful not just to give in to the distraction of doing what everyone else is doing. Nobody can do the great work that God has created them for if you allow yourself to be governed by what other people do and what other people think. It's not going to happen. So we got to refuse to be distracted by what everybody else is doing. And Sanballat, again, he's trying to use fear to keep Nehemiah from building the wall and completing the wall. And listen, we have to keep our guard up for this desire for safety. 1 Thessalonians 5 verse 3 warns about this. When people are saying peace and safety, when that becomes your primary objective, your primary focus, says destruction will come on them suddenly. When all we care about is being safe, and we forfeit the idea that God actually created us for significance, not for safety, destruction is close at hand. Don't sell out the great work that God's doing in your life for counterfeit safety and manufactured peace. They were trying to use fear to hold him back. Listen, the devil is not creative. He's been trying to use fear and intimidation and distraction since the Garden of Eden to get people to roll over on their God purpose, to get good people to stop doing great work. We cannot let ourselves get intoxicated by fear. Man, our whole culture right now is like fear drunk. We've taken in so much fear that we've lost the ability to think rationally and think reasonably. We've given ourselves over to the control of fear. Fear is a liar. Understand that fear and faith are both future focused. In both situations, you're looking ahead. You're just predicting a different outcome. I've got to force myself to make the decision and come to the conclusion that if God is great and glorious and he's got a great and glorious future for me, then I can look ahead and be faithful, not fearful. I'm faithful for what God's going to do. Do I know how he's going to do it? Absolutely not. Has he told me every step of the plan? No, he hasn't. Is there some uncertainty? Yes, but that doesn't mean I have to be paralyzed with fear. Nehemiah stands up. Should a man like me run away? Should someone like me go and hide? Man, I feel like that same resolve is starting to get stirred up in our church. Where when given the opportunity to be safe or significant, people are starting to stand up and say, should I really go and hide? Should I really run away? Should a man like me run away? Should a man like you, should a woman like you run away and play it safe instead of being significant like God created you to be? Listen, there is something bigger at stake in the world right now than my safety. There's something more significant than Christians gathering in a little box in Southeast Calgary and playing it safe. Eternity remains on the line for so many people, and a safe church is not going to ever be a significant church. We got to be willing to stand up and say, I'm not going to hide. I'm not here to play it safe. Matthew chapter 5, verse 16, that in the same way, let your light shine before men that they may see your good deeds and praise your Father in heaven. We were not meant to hide out. It's time to shine. It's time to do great work. Nehemiah is an ordinary man who simply said yes to an extraordinary God. And he did a great work. And in Nehemiah chapter 6, it tells us that he finished the wall. Not because of some crazy miracle, not because the Lord sent angels and they started throwing bricks on while everyone was sleeping, not because, there was no sea that parted, there was no big sandstorm that just rebuilt. There's nothing. No. It was the faithfulness and the steady obedience and the willingness to stand up of one ordinary guy who trusted an extraordinary God. He did not compromise and play it safe. He held on to truth. He did not get defensive. He did not come down from the wall and waste moments in the plains of Ono. He refused to get distracted. And God is doing a great work in and through your life. He really is. I believe it. I believe it's happening in our church right now. It's happening in your personal life right now. He's building something great personally for you. And he's building something great through our church. We don't have time to be distracted. We don't know how many more whiles we have. Honestly, I don't know how many more whiles we have to step into a building and worship together. We don't know. We might be here for another 50 years. We might not be here next week. I don't know. I do know we don't have time to be distracted. We don't have time to play it safe. When people are still walking around dead on the inside because they have no hope. We don't have time to play it safe when me choosing to live significantly could mean eternity for somebody. Moved into my new little complex that we're living in right now, and as I was walking out this morning, it was still dark, getting ready to come to church. I was walking past my new neighbors. I don't know who any of them are. I know this guy's got a dog, and it's loud, and it's peed all over my snow already. I know that. But I was walking out, and I thought, God, I might only have 6 months here, but they better be the most significant 6 months of my life. Help me to make this significant, God. This is my while. You've dropped me here, right here, for a purpose. It's my while. He's going to do a great work. And we follow the example of Nehemiah, but most importantly, we follow the example of Jesus, who did the greatest work. Jesus did not compromise. The devil took him to the mountaintops and offered him all the kingdoms of the world. But Jesus was so committed to the vision for you that he said, no, thanks, I don't have time for that. Jesus did not defend himself against his accusers. He stood before Pilate in his trial and didn't respond, didn't offer a defense. He was led like a sheep to the slaughter. Why? Because he was so confident in the truth of what he was on the planet for that he didn't need to defend an argument with other people. Most importantly, Jesus did not come down off the cross. Just like Nehemiah did not come down off the wall, just like you and I are not going to come down off the great work that God is using us to build. We're not going to get distracted. Jesus hung on the cross, and the Bible tells us he could have called legions of angels to rescue him in a moment's notice, but he didn't. Why? Because he had you in his sights. He had your salvation in his sights. He saw every sin, every mistake, every bit of guilt and shame and heartache and heartbreak, and he hung on because he knew that if he stayed there, you'd be here. The greatest work. This church has never existed so ordinary people could stay ordinary. We've always felt in our hearts that we had to be here from day one so ordinary people could say yes to an extraordinary God. And together we do unprecedented things. And so I want to pray for you tonight. I want to ask you to bow your heads and close your eyes. I believe that God is still releasing vision and calling and destiny and purpose. And there are some of you in the room, and you know tonight that you've been distracted and you've been looking at this direction and that direction, and it's been taking a toll on what God's been trying to build in and through you. You've been sacrificing the good work. And so, Jesus, I pray right now for anybody that would look back and have regret over whiles that they've wasted, over moments that have been wasted. God, thank you that you can lift that regret off of their shoulders right now. God, it's a fresh start tonight. God, we're going to stand up. We're not going to run away. We're not going to hide. We're going to live for significance. God, you have created us with a purpose and a plan. And now with everybody's eyes closed, I want to give an opportunity. There's somebody in the room tonight, and this is your moment. I mean, your whole life was led to this moment right here where you'd have the opportunity to say yes to Jesus with your life. You've been running, you've been hiding, you've been overwhelmed, you've been exhausted. But in a moment, I'm going to count to 3. And when I hit 3, if you know that you need Jesus, you don't want to do another day, another moment without him. When I hit 3, I want you to slip up your hand and we're going to pray together. It's time to stop running. It's time to stop pretending. It's time to stop playing. God's got a plan for you, and you got to accept him into your life if you can step fully into that plan. So if that's you in the room, nobody's looking. It's a private moment. But here we go. 1, 2, and that's you. 3, go ahead. Just slip up your hand real quick. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, several people tonight. Incredible. Incredible. Yeah, see you guys. You can put your hands down. That's amazing. So proud of you for making that step tonight. Here's what I'm going to do. It's just in a posture of worship and respect for a holy moment. Would everybody just stand to their feet? We're going to pray together. Go ahead, everybody. Just stand up real quick. And I'm going to ask you to pray this simple prayer with me. And if you raise your hand, man, you pray it in your heart. This prayer is for you. Come on, can we repeat this together? Say, Jesus, I need you. Forgive me for my sins. Come into my heart tonight. In your name, amen. Come on, everybody. Let's just give it up for all the people that just made that decision and asked Jesus in.